Hey, James.
Nothing worse than that, right? Being in the middle of what you're talking about and then dropping out, hey?
Yeah, was quite a surprise, but I like surprises.
Yeah, quite the surprise indeed. Living on the edge, man. All right. Well, thanks to everyone else who has come through. Everyone's starting to join slowly but surely. Harold, just before we move on to completing your presentation, someone asked, what are the minimum requirements to run a node? What would you suggest?
Yes. Well, it's a very difficult question. So basically, if you ask what are the minimum requirements, you're asking for system specifications that are able to run a node which can't handle any transactions at all, because that are the minimum requirements. You can run the node, but you can't do anything else. So we usually don't like to think in these terms. We like to talk about let's say, the recommended specifications, or the minimum specifications under continuous full load. So what I can tell you, if you really want to know the minimum specifications, currently you can run the node on a Raspberry Pi 4, which really isn't a strong hardware device. So with the current load, you can run it on Raspberry Pi 4. But if at any time we should get under continuous full node, you will currently need at least a Ryzen 5 3600, 32 gigabytes of RAM, although it should be also possible with less, but we didn't test it, and an SSD. This will change in the future when we change our benchmarking system to a general automated benchmarking system. So yeah, for now you can go with that, but it will change in the future.
Okay, well, that's helpful, man. That's helpful. And perhaps you could just drop it in the documentation or in the Discord a little bit later on for anyone else that may want to know. But yeah, that's helpful. We're just waiting for David. I see David is there. And Hutch is just typing up and making sure everything works out. And yeah, David, so a couple of questions coming through as well. So maybe you'd like to answer them. I think the one that may be pertinent for you is the question of there was a question around the price of an outcome token. Does the result depend on the amount of people who participate in the bets? I guess not. I think that was the...
No, that's right. So you could have a market where most people are wrong, but you have, you know, a few people or even one person that is correct, and importantly knows that they're right, and just keeps that price, you know, where it is, and then just takes all the free money from the people who are wrong as they keep coming in. So yeah, it's to your advantage to you don't, it's not like averaging or you know other mechanisms where, you know, polling or where the market will move around as people make their bets, but you know, they will settle out to people who have, you know, the convictions and or right, and that'll be borne out when the market settles. So so yeah, don't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. And so to everyone that is in this crowdcast right now, after we had to switch over, please just pop in a question. If you have any questions for David, who is CIO, formerly at Consensus as well. So you've got a great history, not only in prediction markets, but in crypto as well. But if you have any questions for David, guys, please drop them. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen there. It says ask a question. And then the others who don't want to ask a question, you can upvote some of the questions as well. David, just perhaps before I get to the this question here, which has just popped up, your entrance into prediction markets Tell us about that. Like, you're at Consensus, you're doing a whole bunch of crypto work, and then you went over to the Web3 Foundation, but then combined your previous work with your work in crypto to start Zeitgeist. Tell us about that journey from Web3 into Zeitgeist.
Sure. Well, I guess, just briefly, to answer that would be to go back a bit. So I got interested in prediction markets in the early 2000s. And they were written about chiefly by an economist named Robin Hanson at George Mason University. So this is an idea that in the crypto space, we've seen a lot of great work and wonderful projects in the last 5 or 6 years. But Robin, I believe, started to publish on prediction markets in the late 80s. And the first paper was called "Encouraging an Honest Consensus." And I don't know about you, but I think more honest consensus is something that we need in society in various ways. So I ran across prediction markets as a political nerd, looking for a better way to do election forecasting and political intelligence. So I became involved there via Robin and started a company called Consensus Point, where we drove adoption of prediction markets in the corporate space. Mainly, the company was called Consensus Point. And after doing that for several years, really started to run into some friction that crypto networks can solve in terms of liquidity and just being able to navigate through some challenging regulatory environments that are easier to do these days than in times past. So it's been an interesting journey, kind of a circuitous one, but I'm really excited about what Zeitgeist is doing, and given the adoption curve that we've seen as that rate increases, being able to leverage some of the work that's really already has been done in the prediction market space, but has not yet been realized in the crypto context. So really looking forward to that and sharing more in the future.
Yeah, and my apologies, just a little correction. So many people came from the Web3 Foundation that I'd mixed up that you actually weren't at the Web3 Foundation. So my apologies for that.
No worries, not at the foundation itself, but involved in Web3 for a while. So
yeah. And so I understand it was straight from Consensus, not Consensus. Consensus.
That's right.
Straight over to Zeitgeist. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, here's a question that's come through from Golden Calf, and he said that he remembers hearing Dr. Wood talk about futarchy in 2018. Where does the concept come from? I mean, you did mention Robin Hanson, but the bit you could maybe go into a little bit more about the origins of futarchy. But the crux of this question is interesting. What sort of implications will it have for an ecosystem like Kusama?
Sure. Well, futarchy represents, a vast, is vastly more valuable than what most people think about when they consider prediction markets. Prediction markets to a lot of people are betting exchanges, and that's okay. Having a place where people can come in and make predictions about future outcomes, has a lot of value. But with futarchy, also called decision markets, futarchy is sort of an application of decision markets for governance. Allows you to do decision contingent outcomes. So in other words, what would happen if we did this? So instead of just predicting whether or not a project will complete on time or whether an election will happen on time, you can actually predict what is the consequences of this election going this way or that, or if you have a set of proposals you can use futarchy and decision markets to help you gain insight into, say, if we enacted proposal A, how much more beneficial it will be than proposal B or C, for example. And so, in terms of impact, one immediate one is in DAOs and crypto networks. But I think in the DAO community, particularly, is waking up to futarchy, and that's a trend that's going to continue and accelerate, and that's borne out by what we've seen, but also what we expect to see based on our past experience running prediction markets. So super happy about that. It really makes sense, and especially we need that as a society. So glad to see that too.
Absolutely. I mean, this recent furor around the American elections really brings into spotlight how important accurate data is in polling and predictions. So really, really intriguing. David, what about the Kusama Derby itself? What are you most excited about in terms of this first launch of the Zeitgeist testnet?
Well, I'm just excited to show what Zeitgeist is about, what we can do. We worked hard to put this together, but also it's kind of just an imprint or a snapshot of what Zeitgeist is about. This is a slice of the product, but very much not the whole product. This is really just kind of the tip of the iceberg to show people. But there's a lot of things happening, and just really delighted, as I said, that people are as engaged as they are, and one of the things that I'd love to see is if you're a developer, an entrepreneur, someone with an idea based on your experience in a domain about hey, I'd really like to here's a knowledge problem that I have, or I know about this, I really want to set up a prediction markets, is for you to reach out to us. You can do that via Twitter. You can email hi@zeitgeist.pm, hi@zeitgeist.pm. That would be great to hear from you and see how we can help.
Awesome. So I'm going to invite Logan and Hutch to come back in, and we'll take questions from the audience in the final few minutes. Any other final comments from the rest of the team before we take questions? And for those of you that are watching, please just hit the Ask a Question button at the bottom, and we'd love to take your questions. Any other comments before we go to those questions? I'm going to take that as a no then. Fine. You guys want to make me work hard today, hey? So let's go to a question that came up earlier. Are we trying in the Derby, right? This was from Terry. He says, are we trying to gain as many points as possible or just guess the winner? And I think that question derives from the various rewards from the Gleam campaign. How would you guys answer that?
Yeah, so we need a way to kind of quantize like the results. So it's not so much who picks the winner as it is who makes the best prediction. And who makes the best prediction will translate to who earns the most ZBP at the end. This is because if you predict something when the price is lower, it's as if you had more conviction in that. Like you were making a prediction that wasn't obvious, and the way the mechanism works is that it'll pay you back more if you make a prediction earlier on, or when the prediction is lower. So for the Derby, we are incentivizing all participation. We will consider the ones who placed trades for the winning teams, but we're also considering the end balances of ZBP as well. So So yeah, so like I showed earlier, like ways to kind of grow your ZBP. So that's one way is to arbitrage. Now what you can do with that is use that ZBP on another market. Let's say you're sure Karura will win slot 1. Well, slot 3 is still kind of up in the air. So you can use the gain ZBP from the slot 1 market to go place trades on the slot 3 market.
Hey, James, one quick thing there. Also, one of the things I like about prediction markets a lot is not only can you get rewarded for being right, you can get rewarded for correcting other people who are wrong. So as we were talking about, Logan mentioned arbitrage opportunities. If you see a horse that's a little hot, a little over, the market is over optimistic, then you can likewise get points for adjusting that down to where you feel like is more realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in essence, the beauty of a prediction market. It's no longer just a bet. It's actually incentivizing people to make the correct prediction. So next question here is, it seems the ED for Zeitgeist is 0.01. Is that correct? Mama asks, is he correct in understanding that? He just wants to know how much is needed to buy or sell. He says he couldn't do anything with 0.0112.
Yep, so just to clarify what ED means. So ED in this context is existential deposit. So existential deposit is the amount of tokens that are required to stay on an account for that account to remain part of the chain, part of the storage. So yeah, in Zeitgeist, the existential deposit is set to 0.01 ZBP.
All right. And then I'm not sure if anyone wants to add anything to that. We're good. Okay. Tom asks a question which got upvoted, and perhaps you guys would be able to provide insight here. Is it possible to win the Derby without being a whale? In other words, I think his understanding is that if you have more ZBP, you get to place more predictions and therefore you have more chance of winning. Is he correct in saying that? Or is this an even playing field?
So we are taking into account the end balances of ZBP. So we try to even it out as much as we could. So with the restrictions on the faucet. Now at the same time, we also wanted to give a benefit to the KSM holders. So we allowed the KSM holders to claim an equivalent amount of ZBP. So people who held KSM do start out with a bit of an advantage for that reason. Now, even if you're using the faucet, you will still get ZTG. It's not like we're going to give all the ZTG to the whales. The way we're going to weigh the results, we'll try to minimize the difference between the balances, but it will take into account the balances. So yeah, it's another reason to try to kind of grow your ZBP with the different methods.
Yeah. So try and go through all of those, the options on the Gleam campaign, and just do everything you can to be involved in the campaign. And there's still a solid 10 days left as well. This is a technical question, which I'm going to ask you if you guys can comprehend it. Can you confirm if this is the extrinsic? Prediction marquests, I don't know if he's spelled that incorrectly. Prediction marquests space dash space by complete set open bracket market underscore ID comma amount close bracket question mark.
Yeah, so that sounds like the extrinsic. I don't see where this question is, so I can't confirm exactly. Someone looks like someone just posted a prediction markets. If this is the extra, so yes, this is the one that I showed off earlier.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob, for putting that in there. Much appreciated. Someone asks here, how do we make sense of the amounts in the positions? I think that was kind of touched on, I'm assuming, by the oversold example that you showed of Karura, but perhaps you'd like to provide additional insight. How do we make sense of the amounts in the positions? And if that question doesn't make sense, we can move on.
So the amounts in the, so not exactly sure what the question is asking. If it's asking how do we place the horses, so essentially what we did was we created a market. We put initial liquidity into the to an AMM, an automated market maker, that has each of these outcome tokens inside of it. So as people buy the token, it removes liquidity from the AMM, therefore moving the price. And the price movement is what's reflected in the horse position.
Yep. Next one here. This one's interesting from Thorsten. To define the winning outcome of a prediction market, an oracle from the real world is needed, as far as I understand. An oracle example could be the publication of the results of the US presidency, voting in the US newspapers. Not every oracle might be safe and secure against attacks or cheating. Do you have an idea which categories of oracles are good or bad for usage with prediction markets? Maybe, David, you'd like to take that question because you've actually dealt with real world prediction markets as well.
That's right. So what's important in creating a market is just be very explicit, and remove any and all ambiguity about how the market's going to be settled. And so in defining the oracle, that's where that would happen. And so sometimes it makes sense to, it just depends on the context. Sometimes you will resolve the oracle in a very decentralized way, and that's ideal in many respects, but not most. Sometimes there is, a very singular source of information where you can resolve it based on that, but also with checks, to guard against fraud. So Zeitgeist allows for both, all across that spectrum. And so, that's not something that's demonstrated here in the Derby, but, we'll be sharing more about in the future. And, but Logan or Hutch, feel free to add details, but, completely agreed with the question.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, I think it's more of an abstract question around the whole fundamental framework of prediction markets themselves. And it's obviously important to understand that the Kusama Derby is one sort of example of what a prediction market could be. There's a whole bunch of other opportunities and rollouts of how a prediction market can look in a real world environment. A technical question, just a basic user question here from Odin. What's the best way to find my wallet balances across all 3 slots, across all tokens?
So we have the positions page. The positions page, so it's a button on the nav bar. It'll show you your balance in the outcome token. So currently this is the best way, and I think I saw you ask a follow-up question to this, requesting for the decimals in the positions page, which is something we'll add pretty soon.
Cool. All right. Mama wants to ask another question. He's asking a follow-up question. He's saying, my positions are still showing after I sold. Why is that? Also, I have a funny Kusama Derby live 0 position, probably because I bought before the Derby started. What's up with that? Yes,
so that is because you bought before the Derby started. So we had test markets, and what you did was you bought from a test market. So not sure what happened there. Maybe for some reason you got when you loaded the page, you loaded it before the latest updates were pushed. But so what you can do is you can sell that position. You'll have to use apps, Polkadot.js apps to do that. But you can go back and get ZBP from that. And was that the full question?
That was the full question. Yep.
Okay.
All right. I think we're going to have to leave it there, everyone. We are out of time, I'm afraid. Hutch, I'm going to hand back over to you. Thank you so much for letting me moderate today. It's been fun. Thank you so much to our CIO, David, and our CEO, Logan. It's been real great, and I've really enjoyed it. And thanks to our users. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And please share all of Zeitgeist's work far and wide, and hit those retweet buttons on Twitter. Thanks, Hutch.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining in, and thanks for helping moderate today, James. And continue to watch out for more updates from us. We'll be, moving quickly along past the Kusama Derby and into some more exciting things about the Zeitgeist protocol and some different ways for the community to participate. So definitely just pay attention to the things we're doing and join in on the fun.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, everyone.